Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Thylacine Research Unit's first podcast. I'm Warren Darren. With me, I have Bill Flowers and Chris Copeland, and together we are the Thylacine Research Unit.
Evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I must forewarn you that I've got a couple of beverages going on here too, so this could be an interesting discussion.
Well, we do get the best sense out of you, Chris, when you have been having a few, so it means that we might get some really top-order, world-class zoologist facts from you tonight.
Or just a complete load of.
Yeah, either or. It's either one extreme or the other.
As for me, I'm just awesome all the time.
Well, Bill, I'm thinking that your beard is looking quite awesome and manly tonight. So
that's why I'm drinking, Warren.
Is it because you realise that you cannot grow such a manly beard as Bill?
Not in the slightest. It's because I just want to block out the beard.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a fairly wise thing to do. Unfortunately, I'm reduced to soda water here, so no such luck with the beer. But I do note, Chris, that you're drinking what beer?
Beer 4X Gold there, Warren.
4X beer, so a Queenslander beer.
Absolutely.
Being drunk by a Tasmanian. So we don't drink, what's that beer that the Americans think we drink?
Foster's.
Foster's, yeah. I don't think they even sell it here, do they?
I think you'd be shot if you got seen drinking a Foster's, to be honest.
I think you're right. So this evening, guys, I really want to have a look at some potential thylacine evidence that's been sent to us through our Facebook page. We got sent a little while ago an alleged thylacine recording, a sound that was made somewhere in the Tasmanian wilderness. And I think it's important to note that there is no historic recording of any thylacine sound. There's only pictures, only film. So that makes it very difficult to actually compare this sound or any sound for that matter with something that we know is 100% thylacine. So both of you guys have had the opportunity to listen to this sound. So Bill, what's your first impressions of this particular recording?
It's not very clear, is it? That's my first impression.
Are we talking to old ears or younger ears?
Well, I think you've got to declare your Squatch-like hearing impairment, Bill. So
maybe younger ears with more imagination can hear more in there.
Well, that's a very good point in terms of when we're presented with this kind of thing. There's sort of confirmation bias can slip in, and people can hear potentially what they want to hear, can't they?
Definitely.
So your impression is, can you hear distinctive yaps in the recording, Bill?
I struggle to hear much in the background at all. There's some sort of continuous noise in the background, but I'm struggling to hear it amongst all the rustling and the human talking.
Yeah, get off the Squatch. That could be a jackhammer and you wouldn't hear it. I can hear... to my ears, there is a definite sound going on in the background there, even without enhancement.
That's in a yapping sound.
Yeah, there's definitely an underlying sound there, and I could see why people would have been... their curiosity would have been sparked.
Yeah. Well, I guess just to give a little bit more background for the sound, allegedly recorded on the 31st of March 2013, so a little over 2 years ago, in a part of Tasmania that has got good thylacine habitat, good history for thylacines pre-1936 with bounties, and then also good post-1936 history with sightings, some quite recent sightings, in fact. So that seems to, I guess, satisfy the three H's perspective. So, Chris, what do you think about the actual location itself? Is it plausible that a thylacine could be in that particular area?
Yeah, definitely. Realistically, sort of, the habitat is relatively suitable. What are our historic references for that area, Warren?
So the historic references say that there actually were quite a few bounties taken in that particular area. So probably about 500 or so within 100 sort of square kilometres of that area, and probably about 20 or so within about 20 square kilometres, and a number of quite good sightings in that area. In fact, a number of actually were followed up by the government and taken quite seriously in the 80s and the 90s, and it sort of trickles down from there into the 2000s in recent times, but there certainly are good records from that area. I guess, Chris, when it comes to things like sort of yapping sort of sounds, you've got a wealth of experience with other marsupial carnivores. How would you compare the sound that is recorded there with some other marsupial carnivores?
It's the thing that troubles me is the consistency of the sound. To my mind, it's too frequent for a marsupial carnivore. In my experience with devil or quoll, they make a few short, sharp vocalizations and then not a lot. It's not a continuous yap, 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 which it appears to be in sections of that recording.
And Bill, what do you think about that consistency that Chris is highlighting there?
Yeah, I've worked with the devils and quolls too, and I'd have to agree with Chris that they're just, it's usually not for a real long time. I suppose the longest I've heard is where we took a devil out of an enclosure because it got injured and didn't want to be by itself, and just sort of yapped for a while. So it's arf, arf, arf for quite a while.
How'd it go, Bill?
Arf. It was something. Okay.
That's a professional right there.
That's right. That's right.
That went on for about 5 minutes or so, but that's probably the longest I've ever heard a devil, and that was unusual circumstances too, because it was being separated, so it wouldn't fight with other devils.
The only
I guess I just want to sort of go back to the Facebook page comments for a second. We've got Margaret Aiken, Margaret Kim, long-time followers and supporters of T.R.U. They make the comment that also seems to be continuous, whether there are two animals communicating. At first thought dogs barking, but if this was a remote area, it would seem unlikely to be dogs. Sounds seem to be rather loud. Any idea how far away the campers would have appeared from the sound? So what do we think about those particular comments? Chris, firstly, two animals. Is there a potential that this is one animal calling to another, and that's what's giving the impression of the continuous sound?
Yeah, I suppose that's certainly possible. We know ourselves from our own experience out in the field, guys, sort of when you're there, it can be quite easy to determine whether it was a big sound further away or a small sound close in. I don't know if the recording equipment used here possibly is recorded enough to sort of make that conclusion.
Well, Bill, what do you think? Potential for two animals?
Yeah, I would have. Yeah, it's funny. Like you'll get sort of male animals competing and going over top of each other, or you'll get one making a noise and then a break, then the other one responding. So I would have thought that if it was two animals, you'd probably get a bit of overlap.
Yep.
Or you'd get a break between.
Yep.
And of course, we're guessing here.
Yeah, and I guess what that then leads to is to say, if it was two thylacines, what would be the purpose of the calling and backwards and forwards? What would be the purpose of the communication? Is it hunting, or do any of the other marsupial carnivores, Chris, communicate in that kind of fashion?
Not really, no, because they're all solitary. And this is possibly the one thing that we don't know about thylacine, is whether you're dealing with a solitary animal or a social animal. my opinion would be it was solitary. So therefore, if it is solitary, then why would it have a need to communicate with other individuals in that manner?
Yep.
Yeah, it's, as far as I know, they're marsupial carnivores. They're alive today. Ambush hunters. But are there any historical reports of thylacines hunting in groups? I think I've read somewhere where I've seen them hunt in pairs. Is that right?
Yeah, I certainly think there's good written record of family groups hunting in terms of one animal calling out to the other, and in that ambush predator mode in terms of trying to drive the prey towards the other animal that's laying in wait, but certainly no evidence of what would otherwise be called sort of a pack hunting type approach that you would expect with canines.
Just got to remember that there's two forms of social predation. You've got mob killing and social hunting, like pack mentality. Like a mob kill is more like chimpanzees, where they just mob it like a lynch mob, overpower something, no real organisation, and then a wolf uses a real defined pack structure, hierarchy, you take the neck, I'll take the feet sort of thing. So devil, quoll, they can't do either, so I'd be reluctant to suggest that the thylacine was capable of social behaviour when all of the marsupial carnivores are considered solitary.
When you look at young quolls, though, their siblings, they all seem to move together as one, a bit like a mob. Not very well organised, but they do seem to run together. I'm talking about, the quoll siblings just before they're about to leave mum.
Yeah, they usually, in my experience, scare off anything that moves, so they're not real efficient.
Probably not efficient, but if something's injured.
So the other part that, of Margaret's post here, dogs barking. I guess the next question about that in terms of dogs, is it a remote area? They would seem unlikely to be dogs. Is that a true, statement, Chris, in your view, in terms of remote Tasmania? Are there dogs that may be in that particular location that could be barking and making that sound?
My experience of Tasmania is that there's feral animals pretty much anywhere, and we've seen dogs in some pretty remote areas, you and I, as we've been out in the field twice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I certainly recall one incident where we were driving in a remote area and a dog basically ran straight across the dirt track that we were driving along and pretty much scared the crap out of us. A, because there was movement. B, it was about the size of you'd expect to see a thylacine, and it's a blurring sort of fleeting glance, and you don't know what it is. So I guess in that instance, we were lucky that we could sort of stop and sort of track it and then eventually get it on video. But otherwise, and if the animal was the right colour, it would have been very easy to believe that it was a thylacine if you'd just got that fleeting glance. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't sort of prescribe to this idea that sort of you're not going to see those animals, like the feral animals in wilderness. Like, I work in a fairly wildernessy area, and I saw a feral dog the other day for the first time.
Can I just throw a question which might show how naive I am about dogs, but would one solitary dog by itself make a continuous yap, or are we talking about dogs plural? So, as a feral animal, for a feral population to establish itself, there'd have to be more than one dog. And once you get more than one dog, they'd form a pack, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but feral, like if it's a dumped animal, like, and it's not a true feral, or it hasn't packed up, if it's just sort of a recent sort of escapee or dumpee, then it's potentially going to be quite stressed. It's going to be quite hungry. It might be sort of resulting in that sort of continuous yapping. I know when I go out the driveway, my dogs continuously yap until they can't hear my car.
Mm.
Does that mean that it could be a dog that sensed that there are people close and started yapping, hopefully trying to draw the attention of humans?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, look, and I think that's actually a really good point, because I think that's probably the reason why, people, see these dogs by the side of the roads, because the dogs are quite curious. They're looking to see whether their owners have come back. So they come out and have a look, and I think that was certainly the case when Chris, you and I came across two dogs.
Yeah, definitely.
When we were out, and they were checking us out, and at one stage we thought that they were going to attack us, and then they let us be. But I think that curiosity of, so who are these two humans? And we certainly weren't expecting them to be there. They had no apparent owners anywhere nearby. So
no. It's happened to me up the Highlands as well, like when I used to have that Hilux, which is a pretty common vehicle in Tasmania. Like, I was just driving with a mate down a four-wheel drive track, and suddenly there was one hunting hound. 5 minutes later there was five, and they were just coming out of nowhere because they heard the vehicle, and my sort of assumption was that it was the same vehicle that their owner had, and they'd sort of run to it thinking it was pickup time. Yeah,
that's right. You've got that distinctive diesel sound to your vehicle. So, I know my dog certainly knows that I'm home well and truly before I open the door. Just going back to Facebook, Stephen Gallagher here. He's pretty convinced that it's a Yowie who's out of beer. What do we think about that particular prediction?
I think that'd be a crime if a Yowie was out of beer.
Oh, that's right. In the height of a Tasmanian winter,
yeah.
No sustenance.
I just want to say now, it wasn't me.
It wasn't. Well, we know that you don't drink, Bill, so we certainly know that wasn't you. So,
yeah.
Hasn't had a beer since '86 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. So,
more recent than that, isn't it? '93, I think.
Yeah.
So I guess the next question that I have about this is, let's just assume for a second that this really is a thylacine, or maybe two thylacines out there yipping and yapping. Could it actually, this recording, serve as proof that thylacines still existed? Chris, what do you think?
No, I don't think any sound recording could be utilised as proof, because the bottom line is that we've got nothing to compare to. We've got nothing to sort of use as a baseline to run a comparison to. So you could use it for supporting evidence, or to sort of postulate that they could hypothesise that they could still be there, but I don't think you could use it as proof. And that's coming from someone who's obsessed with using sound equipment out in the field to try and get vocalizations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Parabolic Dish. Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, sort of like, well, first of all, if you want to do some sort of proof, you have to basically say it can be nothing else but thylacine. And so you have to rule out everything else, amphibian, bird, mammals, bats, whatever. Yeah.
Interference.
Completely ruled out. Yeah, all sorts of interference, UFOs.
Trans-dimensional beings. Yeah.
Well, could be a time slip. Could actually be thylacines, and there's some sort of time slip that's pushing it back to the 30s or something. So
we should get what's his name, the In Search of Alien dude onto this.
Oh yeah, your name.
Georgiano or what?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
He'd come up with a suitable interdimensional theory for it.
Either that or ghosts to thylacines.
So, guys, what about the chain of evidence, Bill? In terms of how could we actually take this to get peer reviewed in the scientific community? You want to risk your reputation on putting this forward. What kind of issues are around proving that this is a thylacine recording?
Well, it's just there's not enough proof there. If you're talking scientifically, it's not enough proof. If you're talking legally, with a bit of a flashy lawyer, maybe it's a bit of proof. Well, what I mean by that is, okay, you got these guys out in the bush, they hear a noise, they think, well, that's unusual, could it be a thylacine? So then it's sort of, basically, if you take that as, as that's true, like I say, this is more legal proof than scientific proof, we're putting our faith in these guys, this is true, well, then it can only really be dog or thylacine, I think. Because why else? They wouldn't. So they'd be hearing frogs. They'd be hearing birds, unless there's a weird bird that they're not used to. But I'm unaware of birds that make that sort of noise at night time.
If we backtrack one step, we are assuming that it was actually. We're taking them for their word. We're assuming that it was actually even taped in Tasmania.
Well, that's right. So
could have been our Canadian friends, or in the States, or Azerbaijan, or wherever. There's nothing in that rustling that's definitive Tasmanian plant communities or anything like that.
Well, that's right. Although the accents of the protagonists actually are quite clearly Australian.
What did they say? A Tassie tiger?
Close.
Oh dear, yeah. Sort of vivid memories of being stuck in a car for hours and hours and hours, and Bill saying,
"Yeah, what happens in the field stays in the field." Bill was.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah. Thank goodness for that. So I guess that's a really good point in terms of, when we go out into the field to make these attempted sound recordings, we also videotape what we're doing. So it's a lot more discernible in terms of actually where our location is, so that we could actually sort of prove that, and we take GPS readings and all those sorts of things. But without that sort of geotagging, this sort of random submission of an audio sound, it could literally be anywhere in the world. And I think recently we saw a photo of a dead fox on the side of the road, and just because the photo was taken with a Tasmanian license plate in the background, I know a number of people leapt to the conclusion that clearly it was run over and hit in Tasmania. But I understand from time to time that Tasmanians are allowed to leave Tasmania and take their cars, so you'd think that it's probably somewhere on the mainland.
We got this new fandangled internet thingy the other day too.
Yeah. Really, it works, does it?
Yeah, just.
Just.
Yeah.
So I guess the other sort of comments that I've got here, I'm just sort of looking for them, and I guess there's a lot of stuff about background sounds, and how could we actually tell whether this is a recording that's made from a distance versus a loud sound at a distance versus a much quieter sound up close? Chris, what do you reckon about that? You're the sound recording guru.
I know, I think it's difficult, without knowing the equipment, without having used the equipment that he's used or they've used. It's going to be difficult. You can spend a bomb on a prosumer or even a professional grade camera, but the inbuilt mic is terrible. And so it would depend on what equipment was being used. I am thinking louder sound further distance away, but I've got nothing to sort of substantiate that with. I don't know what you guys are thinking.
Well, one of the things that I recall, Chris, one of the times when we were out in southwest Tas and we got what we thought was a distant yap, was that we were aided at the time by the fact that we had a distress caller that was out at a known distance, which was, I think, about 20 metres away from the recording device. And we could tell that by the level on the recorder, the distance from that, and also that came up in the audio analysis software, so you could tell that the sound was much further away than that. So that then said loud sound further than 20 metres away. So that ruled out your frogs and your crickets and all those sorts of things. And, maybe even some of the gliders and stuff that we've been told have been in that area. But I think that kind of knowledge and that reference allows us to do it. But other than that, I guess, Bill, you've been quoted as saying that if a unusual sound happens in the bush, then you'll know what it is. How would you judge the distance?
This is backtracking a little bit. There's a couple of things after, so I'm just thinking about this. First of all, their ears are going to be better than the equipment that they're recording it with, so they've actually heard this noise.
So hang on, Bill, are you saying that the Mark 1 ear is better than that damn fangled technology stuff? Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that, yes. So the question is, why did they jump to the conclusion that it's thylacine? And it's a bit of a loaded question. I mean, okay, obviously somebody's told them that thylacines make yip yip noises. The other thing about being in remote bush is no matter how sceptical you are, it is in the back of your mind that this is where thylacines once were and people are reporting that they're still here. Is that planted into their head already? A little bit like the Christians in the 70s and 80s playing music backwards to get satanic noises, and it's all, a lot of rubbish really, but they say it says something, it puts that in your head and then you hear it. So is this what's happening?
I think
they coming up with preconceived ideas that if they hear a noise in the background, it's probably going to be a thylacine.
There's a phenomena where humans are pre-programmed to see faces. In the paranormal shows, they call it matrixing. It's got a phenomenally long name, which off the tip of my tongue I can't remember, but like you're pre-programmed to recognise faces in something. Are these guys pre-programmed for some reason to think thylacine?
Yeah, so you're talking about pareidolia?
That's the one.
Yeah. So look, I think it's a really interesting point that you make, Bill. I've spent a lot of time, certainly during my army days, out in the bush in the middle of nowhere, and when you take people out there who aren't necessarily used to the sounds that the bush makes, and you don't have all of the city sounds of cars and all those sorts of things. The imagination can, really take a hold of people. And it's one thing that you can actually hear in the voices of these guys is that they're actually clearly quite excited. And there's a noise there where the guy seems to be knocking on the tent flap to wake his dad up and saying, "Dad, Dad, Dad," There's a Tassie tiger here yapping. Sorry, what was that? How do you say it properly, Bill?
There's a Tassie tiger.
So you've got those things in terms of that physiological sort of phenomena to a stimulus, which can be either an image or a sound, and that's how people see images of Jesus in their toast and all that sorts of things, and how people hear one thing, and as you say, they're in this remote location, they're hearing this strange sound, and they leap to a conclusion: this is a Tassie tiger. But having said all of that, I guess it doesn't rule out the fact that it is possible that they could have heard a Tassie tiger. So, just shortly, Chris, do you think that it is possible that this is actually a thylacine or two thylacines calling out?
I'm not convinced. You can't rule out anything 100%. I'm not convinced, but it's interesting enough to gather us to have this conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Bill, what do you think? Is it possible? A little bit more definitive than the wishy-washy answer that Chris gave.
Would you like me to be more definitive, Warren?
No. It's Bill's turn in the sun now.
Yeah. I was building the Jeopardy.
And here it goes. I think that is more likely to be a thylacine than the tooth fairy.
Okay, well, probably most people, sadly, most people would agree with you. So
That made my answer sound good.
Yeah. When I thought it was impossible, Bill comes and saves you there. So Chris.
Here's the interesting thing, though. Like, we've got this sound recording, and we said, "Oh, there's a thylacine in the background." If you were not told that, would you still hear a yip yip noise in the background?
I'd say yeah.
Would? Okay.
Yeah.
Look, I think you probably would, but I know that in one of the times that I was playing the sound, I actually was thinking it sounded a lot like cane toads after a fresh rain. So a lot of cane toads near where I live, and they can make a sound that's very similar to that. So obviously, they're a lot closer. But if you just heard that sound without being, I guess, pre-programmed to say this is thylacine, and anybody who comes into our webpage is going to be expecting that it's thylacine or thylacine-like, or rather than, if we posted this on a dog or a terrier site or an amphibian site, they'd probably be presupposed to that. So conclusion, Chris.
Fantastic sound. Oh, okay. So, skeptometer. This will surprise you, but I'm sort of thinking 2-ish.
2. Okay. So what you're saying is there's 20% chance that this is a thylacine or thylacines.
I'm probably more saying that there's 80% chance that it's not.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't. I need a swallow.
What beer are you up to, Chris?
One can only drink them in 6s. So ultimately, I'm not saying it isn't, but for me, there's possibly not enough evidence here. Like, we don't know enough about the location. We don't know what's over the next hill. We don't know enough about it to suggest, okay, that it's not a dog, so therefore I'm going to go well under a 5, just on that alone.
Okay, so what would you say that most likely it is? So that what's 80% chance it is a...
Dog.
Okay.
Canis familiaris.
Bill, skeptometer.
Well, I'm usually not as skeptical as Chris, but I'm going 1.5. Because I haven't had anything to drink tonight.
and you're hearing shot anyway, right?
You can't hear it anyway, Bill. So
all he can hear is someone going, "It's a Tassie tiger."
Yeah, and then
Dad.
Lots of rustling and trees and something in the background.
Yeah.
So that's even one's a bit of a stretch. 10% chance it's thylacine. It's unlikely. It's more likely.
Get off. Coming from a guy I couldn't even hear it. Get off, Warren.
Yeah. What do I think? Well, look, I'm probably pretty low. I mean, like a lot of people who follow us on YouTube and Facebook and I ideally love it to be a thylacine. I think it's very worthy of investigation in terms of, if the location was a little bit closer to us, it'd probably be worthy of going out and having a look at the location and whatnot. And we may do that in an upcoming sort of expedition or whatnot, get out into that area because there are good reports. But I'd be saying, somewhere between, 1 and 2 in terms of balance of probabilities is that it's most likely a dog, and and that's assuming 100% the guys are level and square, can understand that they think it's thylacine, that yet they're in Tasmania, they're in the wilderness, but certainly not enough proof for me.
Smashing.
Well, it's for once Chris has got more faith than the both of us. What's in that 4X stuff?
Moonshine.
It's got all of the enthusiasm and open-mindedness and optimism that comes with being from Queensland. That's what's in that beer.
Yeah. Is that why it's the cheapest shit on the shelf?
That too.
Yeah.
It is hard not actually talking to the guys, meeting these guys who've made it. Without really knowing the background, it's hard to go any higher than that, really. If we sort of, meet these guys, hear the story, sort of suss them out a bit, I might raise it up a bit, but currently, no, it's on about 1.5.
Yeah, well, Bill, that's a really good point, because certainly in the past we have significantly changed our view on witnesses once we've actually, and their associated stories, once we've actually met them face to face. And it's far easier to tell whether someone's having a lend of you, for example, when you talk to them face to face.
That's true. Yeah.
What do you think, Chris, in terms of what would that particular site be of interest to you to follow up based on this recording?
Yeah, definitely. I think if I had the opportunity to, I'd love to get out there and try and sort of take a little bit more technology and sort of the recording equipment that I know and know how to use, and get out there and try and repeat it.
Maybe we better put it on our to-do list.
Absolutely. Bag's not letting Squatch drive.
You'll never get there.
I'll have you know that every time I've been in T.R.U. 2, driven by Bill Flowers, I've arrived safely. Somewhat tardily, but I've arrived safely.
I'll have you know a vehicle's got more than 2 gears too, Warren.
No, stop talking nonsense, Chris. Stop talking nonsense.
Well, you saw me go up to 5th gear once.
Yes, I actually have been in that car when it was doing 90 kilometres an hour. Bill was very proud of himself. So, the fact that everybody else is doing 120 is
that's probably a pretty good note to end on before I start slamming TRU2 vehicle.
Well, righto, guys. Well, thanks for the chat this evening. That concludes our first analysis of a piece of evidence. What we might do in future is, I guess, get people on the Facebook page to suggest topics that they might want us to actually cover in these kind of sessions. Just because we're going to do these podcasts doesn't mean that we don't have a raft of field investigation videos that we want to bring to you guys in the near future. But I think that this medium also works to have some of those more in-depth discussions, albeit with a bit of a light tone and a bit of a laugh as well.